Naughty boy.
First, come have a bath, then go out.
But he has just had a bath.
Any proof?
I have bathed him myself.
But Mom, the germs are laughing because these ordinary soaps are less effective on them. That's why there's new and advanced Lifebuoy.
New Lifebuoy with Active 5 to give you 100% better germ protection from germs.
Any proof?
Mom, it's lab tested. There's 100% proof.
The world's #1 germ protection soap. New Lifebuoy.
With MTN, everywhere you go. Bank of Africa, as strong as a group, as close as a partner. And Lipton, inspiration flowing from nature.
Hello, very good morning to you and welcome to Newsfile. This is your most authoritative news analysis show. I am Samson Ladi Ayanini, and on Newsfile, as you know, as always, we put Ghana first. Our collective purse bleeds heavily, though we have not stopped paying taxes. Pensioners can't be paid because our bankers, the central bank, has no cash. Certainly unrelated, but guess what? We hear young men and women eking out a living at Nkrumah Circle tell gut-wrenching stories about how they have to manage 2 cedis a day for food. Then, from New Jabing, Eastern Region, comes odd news. 45-year-old Victor Dagadu hangs himself after days of complaining about economic hardship. A global economic examiner, Fitch, compounds our troubles with a downgrade B rating. Government says that is just unfair. The president assures he won't borrow too much more. But I dare say, a country of 24 million people where only 500,000, that's 500,000 government workers, swallow up 70% of the cash that comes to the kitty, must be sick. Question: what is wrong? And will things get better anytime soon? Jerry Rawlings, from greedy bastards to babies with sharp teeth. Now, he says, John Mahama, will he succeed in getting the economy back on track if he doesn't do away with crookish monsters, i.e. criminals in his cabinet who are working against his fight to reduce corruption in the government? Well, the word cabinet here is used in a loose sense to denote people close to him. So, can Ghanaians expect those indicted in the Jida rot to pay the penalty for their alleged sins, even when the government lawyer, the biggest law chambers in the country, declares its inability to cancel alleged lopsided and unconscionable contracts that cost the country millions of cedis monthly, or retrieve some 200 million Ghana cedis the Jida service providers owe the country? We will find time and find out if the NPP government sabotaged Rawlings' UDS award, if we have. Thank you very much, and thanks for indulging me. Very long introduction, but it is very necessary. We'll be right back to deal with the matters on this platform.
The ratings had focused on the short term, which is very important, but Ghana did not have a 1-year realignment, program, and that we had announced a 3-year, program. Nobody describes a Fitch rating as a fact. They have a criteria and they use it. But I had hoped that they would also look at the full 3-year program and Ghana's, prospective medium term, which everybody concedes, is a bright one, and for which reason we are implementing the measures. The second point I made was about the measures, that even in the short term, the government had demonstrated enough courage, to show that it was willing to tackle the issues that were confronting the economy. And I went ahead to say that in the 2013 budget, we had actually outlined the causes of the overrun, for the first time quantified them, and announced steps, to correct them. Even as we speak, growing at about 7% potentially for 2013. Against the background of the serious power crisis that we had for a year, and recent gold and cocoa price shortfalls that also affected the economy, many global finance ministers and governments would actually be proud of such a performance. So I ended with a message, to Ghanaians that the economy is fundamentally, strong, and that when you are subject to these types of risks, indeed, to the extent that economies like ours are also volatile, you may experience some of these challenges. But the important thing is that we already have a program outlined for the next 2 to 3 years. Even in this interview, I was careful not to put all the blame on the single spine. Even if we concede that the single spine, is very high, is costing us 65 to 60% of your tax revenue on a single item in the budget, when you should be doing 35%. It's something which I think we should acknowledge, is excessive, and particularly against the background of the various strikes and others that we have. And I have related these as part of the reason that, we have challenges in meeting our expenditure. So I think it is important as a nation, as we all demonstrated in who, that the single spine is a challenge.
All of you to join me in this fight. The president cannot fight it alone. On corruption that is brought to our attention, we have been project, and we are implementing the recommendations. Those who were indicted in the reports, I'm happy to say the CID has invited them and commenced investigations into what they did. And if they are found culpable, the dockets will be prepared and given to the Attorney General in order that they be prosecuted.
As at Tuesday, the conclusions of those meetings were that the status quo should remain. Elections should be held starting from the polling station. And therefore, on Tuesday, the steering committee met with a draft proposal or a draft timetable. Let me say a draft timetable.
Good morning once again, and thank you very much for keeping your dials on Joy 99.7 FM and over a dozen affiliate stations across the country. You're also listening to us at myjoyonline.com or watching us on multi-TV world/streams. And in the UK and elsewhere in Europe, you are watching us on ABN TV. This is the Sky Channel 290. Thank you very much indeed. This is your most authoritative news analysis show. And my guest, are seated. There is one who is also just getting ready to take his seat. And I'm talking about the Deputy Minister in charge of Finance and Economic Planning, the Honorable Kweku Ricketts Hagan. He will take his seat right away. But Abdul Malik Kweku Baku Jr., Editor-in-Chief of the New Crusading Guide newspaper, is here. Good morning, Abdul Malik. Good morning. And we also have Godwin Adawine, who is a law lecturer and a practitioner. Good morning, Godwin, and welcome to the show. Dr. Richard Amwako Ba, he's a senior lecturer, head of the Political Science Department of the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. Good morning, Doc, and welcome to the show. Great to have Kumasi represented in the studio. All right. I've just been going through, flipping through a few of the pages of your book. It's a new book, Introduction to Constitutional Studies. I'll read it and find out what is in there. And so Ricketts Hagan will join us right away. I am Samson Ladi Ayenini. You are welcome. Your views are welcome. 1422. You can also post them on our Facebook wall or send them to newsfile@myjoyonline.com. And I want to say thank you, Evans Mensah, for last week. Okay, so let's get started. And as we had discussed, this time around, the minister is going to stay with us throughout the show. Is that correct? Great. So we'll get to discuss everything else. Now, I want us to, first of all, as we look at the concerns of the ex-president in terms of the fight against corruption by the Mahama administration and tie that one in with whether or not government has the teeth or IOCO and the CID have the teeth to fight the JIDA rots. So those are the two issues boxed together that we want to look at first of all. Great. I'd like to start with you, Doc. All right. And listen to the former president. I'm sure that you're aware of his meeting, his very special congregation to award him, decorate him as a doctor honorary for his monumental role in the setting up of the UDS. And he had a few very, interesting things to say, but said them in quite a humorous manner. And he said that both the good and the bad are around President John Mahama. That John Mahama is unable to kick the bad ones away. And he said, I guess it's because he doesn't know about some of them and their nature. Rawlings told the special congregation, and he went ahead to say that, directly advising the president, he said the president who was also at the ceremony, he told him that he has to keep the crookish monsters, those are his words, the crookish monsters and the greedy bad ones, this time not greedy bastards, greedy bad ones away from him. The question that is being asked now is, President Rawlings certainly must know something that we all don't know. He revealed at the meeting that President John Mahama modestly drives himself to see his doctor, but these greedy bad ones or crookish monsters will even take a car with a motorcade perhaps and all the things that come with it to visit the washroom.
Well, I look at it this way. I see it more like the case of Alibaba and the 40 thieves. Except there are many Alibabas and there are many thieves. And so you can get rid of the thieves. There are still Alibabas running around. It's just a matter of time before they bring the thieves back again. And so if you want to clean up, it has to go deep. As President Rawlings is saying, some of these people who are crooked are still there. And I think that's what he's alluding to, that he has to look around it. It's not enough to get rid of the lower ranking people who have committed crimes against the state. Look at your own ministers. Those who are doing wrong must be brought to book. That's how I saw it.
He says these are the kind of people, the caliber of persons the president has surrounded himself with. And because of that, it's going to be difficult for him to succeed. People are reading that into the fight, particularly in respect of the JIDA, matter, that he may not succeed in the long run.
Exactly. I have problems. I mean, right away, I have problems with, all right, the police, we have a report. And the police wants to call these people. I mean, you don't have to go and arrest them Gestapo style. But at least publish their names. These are the people and these are the charges. Even that is not done. And so you are starting on the wrong foot. It's almost like, even from the beginning, just the release of the names, if it were anybody else, their pictures will be in the papers.
Okay, but don't we know that their names are already in the reports? We are familiar with the report, that very extensive report.
Yes.
Mr. Hagan, good morning and welcome to the show. Thank you very much for joining us. Now he will help us to deal with how to salvage the economy from where it is heading. Fitch has graded us B from a B+. And we're told that what this means is, among other things, is that it's going to be difficult for us to borrow because that's going to be quite a bit. And the president is assuring that he will not borrow too much. Let's see if indeed he won't do that. I was saying that we know that some of these individuals, their names have been mentioned in the report,
yes,
which is all over,
yes,
which has been published,
yes,
after a lot of pressure. Are you saying that IOCO, after inviting them and interrogating them and charging them,
yes,
should also go ahead and publish the names as well?
You have to. I mean, if you're trying to be transparent, if it is already there, what is stopping you from mentioning their names? This one is charged with this one is charged with that. That is how it's done. So if you're going to clean house, start on the right foot. You can't say you're going to clean house and still, it's almost like we are protecting someone. That is not how ordinary Ghanaians are dealt with if they do something wrong.
No, but if the president wanted to protect anybody, he would not deal with the report in the manner he's doing, having put it forward to the legitimate state institutions to take what is supposed to be due process.
Well, he has no choice but to do that. That is his job. He has no choice. It's not because he's doing us a favor. That is his job. And that's one thing I see a lot of Ghanaians. Well, sometimes I feel that we are still stuck in our chieftaincy mode. Right? That you have a responsibility, the CEO of the country. And if something is going on wrong in your company, which is the country, you take the steps, whatever it takes to clean it up. And so if you have to mention their names, mention their names. Why not? This is how it's done. That shows seriousness in this whole business. But to just say that we invited them and they all granted bail, no names, no pictures, I think it's the wrong way to start it.
I see. Godwin, I don't know what you think about. First of all, we're dealing with two issues, and I'll come back to Doc and ask him to be sincere to all Ghanaians and tell us about what he sees about the government's approach to corruption, the fight against corruption, and what he thinks would happen in the long run. But the former president, once again, is talking about using very serious words. The question is, he certainly must know something we don't know, and he, in his very characteristic style, wants everybody else to bear him witness. And he says, I call the people who were at the ceremony to be my witnesses, that I don't wait until it has happened. I try to prompt you before the thing actually happens. And when it comes to the JIDA, I must make a full disclosure here that I am counsel for one of the gentlemen who have been indicted, and I followed him to the IOCO a number of times, and he's been charged and also granted bail. But you can trust me that I'm not prosecuting my case on this platform. I'll do my job in court. Right. So I won't do anything to inhibit. I can't anyway. All right. So let's go on.
It's a complex issue, but let's look at it from this perspective. Mr. Rawlings is supposed to be the founder of the NDC.
Correct.
Which is the party that has produced the government, which is now being accused of not decisively dealing with the issue of corruption.
Correct.
The party is also supposed to have been founded on the ideals of the revolution which Jerry Rawlings led. One would have expected that the party has a position on corruption, a standard, First, as to the conduct which is unacceptable, and then secondly, as to the manner in which that should be dealt with. But of course, the country also has a constitution, which is the supreme law of the land,
right,
and then other pieces of legislation and laws, which will regulate, these activities. So at a point, the party standard may come into conflict with that of the constitution, and the constitution has to prevail.
You may want to look beyond party standards, because this is a president again, and over the years we have seen presidents demonstrate their willingness to fight corruption first through legislation and other actions.
I'm coming to
this
that,
president has seen to the passage of a bill of conduct for public officers, especially those around him. This president also has seen to the bringing together of all legislation that has to do with, graft, corruption, put them together in one whole to use to deal with it. Is it not some demonstration that, what the President Rawlings is saying doesn't really amount to much?
I am unable to agree with that completely, because in spite of all these steps that you have mentioned, he's still complaining. And the point I was driving at is, does the party have a standard, which is not necessarily Rawlings' standard, or President Mohammed's standard, or someone's standard, but the party standard? And what influence does the party as an institution have on the fight against corruption? Don't you forget, in 79 and from 81 down to 1992, Jerry Rawlings led the country, and those in government now were part of the system. How was corruption dealt with? Was corruption dealt with in a manner significantly different from it is being dealt with? Was corruption eradicated during that period of time? What were the real challenges that Jerry Rawlings and his ministers, his secretaries, and other advisors faced? You see, we have not had a situation where the issue of corruption has been transparently, sincerely, and honestly discussed. At every point in time, you have one group only touting how well it fought corruption, without letting us know the challenges that it faced in fighting corruption and how successful it was. So everybody keeps telling us how well his regime was. But we all know, as a matter of fact, that since 1954, to date, there has been no regime that has not been associated with corruption. So every day we keep having corruption. What is the problem, and what has been the problem? A member of the popular stand, so I have to access public service, I have to access public goods, and the frustrations that you feel in having to access those services and goods is something that anybody will face, except those who are properly connected or properly placed. They are able to have it easy. So that is the situation. So, in talking about how President Mahama is fighting the corruption, and it's coming from President Rawlings, we need to look at all these things, and then to really assess and find out whether it's a sincere complaint, or it's just a question of disagreement with style. But the issue of corruption is real now, as it has been at any other point in time.
The approach to the fight, as it were, the issue of the Jida matter.
Well, reading the papers.
12 people have so far been interrogated and charged. Some of them have been granted bail, and the process is continuing. Albeit, some people think it's slow.
Slow, it may well be, but we also need to understand that we do not operate in a situation without laws. There are laws that regulate how things are done. The Constitution is there. There are other pieces of legislation that regulate how people accused or suspected of wrongdoing should be done. We have agreed to operate a system that is regulated by rule of law.
So, but there's a committee that has indicted the individuals there and the companies as well. Says there are contracts that are unconscionable, that are lopsided, heavily tilted in favor of the service provided. And they recommend that cancel these contracts and take your monies back.
But you will not do so in a manner that offends against the basic tenets of rule of law. The people have the right under the Constitution to defend themselves. And you can't deny them that right simply because you want to fight corruption. You have to take them through the due process. And that will be slow, but that is the price we have to pay for operating a constitutional democracy. I mean, otherwise what you're saying is that anytime any group of individuals shout that something is corrupt or something has done this, then we should pick him up.
Not a group of individuals. When 3 committees or more than 3 committees have come to almost the same conclusion that I am guilty of an offense, what next?
The committees still remain a group of individuals, because having said that, the law says that the people should be dealt with in a certain manner. So let us not sacrifice the requirements of the law on the altar of the fight against corruption. So, okay. I mean, while we admit that it has to be fought, we have to use the law. If we come to a point where we feel that the law is inhibiting the fight against corruption, then we change it in a manner that we feel will facilitate that. But I do not think that we should disregard the law.
I see. Before I come to Abdul Malik, the small point that we almost forgot that he raises about the aspect of the recommendations by the investigative committee that says that these number of contracts are not in favor of the government of the people of Ghana. They represent a wastage of the hard resources of this country. So cancel the contracts and take our monies back. The Attorney General says, I don't have the power to do that.
Well, he has the power to do it. Maybe not directly. I mean, it doesn't mean that the Attorney General takes hold of the case completely and then prosecutes it. You, as a lawyer, I can appoint you. If you're my lawyer, you can collect money on my behalf. The Attorney General's office is the lawyer of the country. What is he talking about?
I can collect money on your behalf. You may have to give me a power of attorney.
Exactly.
To do so.
Why can't they give the Attorney General's office that power of attorney? Any institution can give that power of attorney. And that is the right office to investigate on behalf of the country. If these agencies could do it on their own, we won't have this mess to start with. I mean, they are the ones who wrote the contract that way. You're telling the folks to guard the chicken coop again. If they could do it before, why do we have this mess? And so they don't have the credibility to police themselves. You can see clearly that these contracts were written on the favor of the contractors. Somebody comes in and says...
Contractors actually did them and submitted them to the people.
Well, you're making it even worse, something. Is this how it's done? That somebody writes a contract? If you allow me to write a contract, I'll write it in my favor. What is good for me? After all, I'm in business to make money. I train 50 people. I present a voucher for 500. And there's no way of finding out. And if you don't write into the contract that you have to provide so many documentations of it, well, pay me the money. And this is what has happened.
I see.
I don't think the agencies didn't know any better. They did.
Godwin, a bit of a clarity there, and from your perspective as a lawyer, is that Attorney General justified in what it is saying? Because it's saying, I suspect it's a question of a basic principle of law, privity of contract. They are saying that we were not party to the contract, so we do not have the right to seek to impeach it the manner Ghanaians are asking us to do.
You have to appreciate that under our system, there are some of the public entities that can enter into contracts in their own name and then can enforce their rights under such contracts in their own name. So they have independence enough, such independence that would enable them.
But we know that JIDA is not backed by law. Often the statute would have said that this entity is a legal entity and can, sue and be sued.
No, but that's not the point. Who entered into the contract on behalf of JIDA? Even if it's not a legal entity and we are looking at a group of people, it may well be an unincorporated group of individuals. And there are principles of law you can still use to enforce your rights.
So you think the Attorney General has no excuse, like Dr. Amakwe is saying?
Well, the point I'm making is that let's look at the institutions involved. I mean, which state institutions allegedly or have been proved to have entered into those contracts? Do they, under the particular rule setting them up, have the capacity on their own to enter into contracts, enforce those contracts? If they do, then the Attorney General may well be right that this entity can do it on its own, even without us. However, if our advice is sought, then we may well provide it. So that is what we need to establish. Of course, there are some that do not have that legal capacity.
We know by the report that they entered the contracts together with the ministry, the sector ministry, youth and sports, isn't it?
Okay.
So, youth and sports, the Attorney General is a lawyer for the government, isn't it?
Yes.
Just that they did not input into the contracts. The contracts did not come to them. What the people of Ghana, listening to you as a lawyer, want you, who is also frustrated about the corruption, to tell them what they want to hear from you is to whether or not the Attorney General is justified in what it is saying.
And you have given me a particular instance, in the particular instance of a ministry, I mean, which will have to have its contract enforced by the Attorney General, then that's right. And the Attorney General cannot run away from that. But there may well be, I don't know as a matter of fact, but if there are other entities that, unlike the ministries, that can act on their own, the Attorney General may well be right in respect of them, that they can act without the Attorney General Department. But for the ministries of youth and sports and others, yes, I agree with you that the Attorney General will have to act on their behalf.
I'm sure the Attorney General and its officers will be listening to this show, because you do listen to this show. You can place a call to us and justify why, and indeed, if that comment, you stand by it, that you cannot do anything in respect of these contracts. Abdul Malik, some may say Jerry Rawlings doesn't have the moral, authority to be sounding the way he's sounding.
It's tempting, really tempting to proceed in that direction. And since you've provided me with the avenue, I might as well capitalize on it. He was talking about leadership for sustainable development under Ghana's transition to democracy. Right. I'm told that was the general theme. Within that context, of course, you can talk about corruption, morality, legality. All those things come under it. It depends on how you want to craft your speech and deliver it. But the point you made, it's also important. Sometimes it's good to focus on the message and not necessarily the messenger. But sometimes the two go together, depending on who it is that is speaking. And I think with the context of a Rawlings issue, it's important that the two are put together, and I intend to do so. Mr. Rawlings, you see, I have here the Hansard. The original is here, but it's, you can see that it's a bit weak. So I will proceed to read from a transcript.
It has suffered in your hands.
Yeah, it has suffered. It suffered in the official records before it got into my hands.
Every word is marked once or twice.
It's very important. We are talking here of probity and accountability, the integrity. See, if you go to the Hansard of 1st December 1993 and read from the Public Accounts Committee when it was dealing with the Auditor General's report, and I would want to read it before I make my comments. A review, this was coming from Dr. Owusu Ajekun. He was then the chairman of the Public Accounts Committee. This is a review of the public accounts covering the 10-year period from 1st July 1979 to 31st December 1989. Disclosed that accounts were characterized by serious discrepancies, omissions, misstatements, lack of supporting evidence, non-adherence to the generally acceptable accounting standards, and departure from the financial administration regulations, making the accounts unacceptable in the form in which they had been published. These lapses are repeatedly seen in the accounts of 1990 to 92. It was noted that by 1985, when the present Controller and Accountant General assumed office, government accounts had been in arrears for over 7 years. And professionally, any accounts that have been in arrears for even 2 years is likely to face documentation problems. As a result of this, the Accountant General's outfit had to rely on incomplete records for the preparation of accounts, lack of equipment, logistics, and manpower, and for that matter, processing capacity was one of the department's problems. Similarly, your committee learned that the Ministry of Works and Housing operated a research fund account into which were paid levies imposed by the Ministry on Building Materials sold. This fund, which was operated from 1985 to 1988, was not audited because the PNDC Secretary, Dr. Kofi Sam, did not allow it to be audited. In 1989, the said account was reportedly closed by the ministry, but it still failed to submit the accounts for audit. Upon further enquiries, the ministry wrote to the Auditor General to consider the issue regarding the said account closed. This was under the watch of Mr. Rawlings. Come 1995, media allegations led to the Shraj activating an inquiry into those allegations. At the end of the inquiry, some of the functionaries of government were indicted. Shraj made adverse findings. Under the watch of Mr. Rawlings, a government white paper was issued to clean up the act. I can give you a litany of omissions and commissions relative to probity and accountability. Go back slightly to the AFIC accounts, account 48. Rawlings, in handing over to Liman before the August House of Parliament, announced how much had been backed and put in appropriate state coffers. The AFIC did not submit an audited accounts. Under it didn't happen. Throughout the Liman period, when the issues were raised, Mr. Rawlings' response, contrary to what his other colleagues like Boachija and the rest said, was that we should proceed to the fetish shrine to determine the state of accounts of the AFIC account 48. And that is also documented. Whilst the others said, look, the Auditor General has the right, the power, the mandate to audit the AFIC account. We had 3 months, so if we couldn't, let the Auditor General do so. Mr. Rawlings' stand was that no, let us go to Akonedie, which was somewhere in the latter area, and establish whether indeed we chopped money or we didn't chop money. How do we know if you chop money? One, if the accounts are not available, and 2, if they are not audited. So he was jumping the gun. But this was the apostle of probity and accountability, evading the text on integrity. So you see, if it is Mr. Rawlings talking, and there are many, thousands of examples I can give you, but why should we continue doing so? The point is that Mr. Rawlings has carved for himself that image. Look, he's questioned all presidents and all heads of states. From Nkrumah to today, he has. And apparently he's the only clean one left standing, the only blow man who nobody can touch. To that extent, it's not fair to us as a people. Put that aside. But is he raising legitimate issues?
Right.
You see, what is said is generally true of all times, including his. I only established the point that sometimes there's an element of hypocrisy and double standards in his position. But the truth is that all governments have been challenged from Nkrumah to today by the canker of corruption. And it is how you've tackled it that people would say, oh, you did well, you didn't do well. I'm not sure there's any government that we've had in this country that can claim 100% score sheet, I mean, in terms of the fight against corruption.
That
not even the great Osei.
That it hasn't had crookish monsters.
Well, I wouldn't use that description, but we've had corrupt elements. Well, corruption, don't forget, began from Adam. And that's a fact.
Right. And you are not quoting Kufuor. Go ahead.
Kufuor only stated the fact.
Right.
It doesn't mean you should not fight it. So we would look at the conduct, how you fought it. It's a unity of opposites, positives and negatives. You do a score sheet. You would see areas where some governments did well. You see some areas where they failed. The same government failed. It's part of the human element. So here we are. You've given us a specific. You related it to JIDA. So we have to examine JIDA. You see, from day one, this JIDA thing has suffered a certain challenge. And I'm part of that, those who are cynical, are skeptical, because of how it was driven from day one. Even from the point of view of the ministerial level, there's a problem. Earlier investigations took us nowhere. The minister takes over, a higher authority. He finishes the job. The thing goes to the presidency. There's a problem about the content, about publication. All these things sow the seeds of a certain level of cynicism, which is still around here, and it is suffering that way. The final report is supposed to be out. I've seen a copy, and I hope it is the final report. I have the draft as well. I've been doing some comparative analysis. They are virtually the same, to be honest, to a large measure, and I'm sure you've read it, to a large measure. Now, what we have to be, my point was this. I was surprised the president kept on, and I'm told the last one, it was occasioned by what the chief remand spokesperson had said. So perhaps that's a bit forgivable. But you see, consistently we heard from the president or the presidency, we are doing this, we are doing that. Yoko or CI, I thought that was unnecessary. After the matter had been handed over, this is the government action paper.
Right.
On JIDA, issued 26th August 2013. Actions and directives, I would read. That's paragraph 4. The Ministerial Impact Assessment and Review Committee admits that they did not have access to all information they would require and did not have enough time to get into greater details on certain other aspects of the report. It is also known that the committee was unable to interrogate some of the individuals mentioned in the report. Consequently, and in compliance with the principles of natural justice, Yoko and the Attorney General's Department, as well as the police CID, have been directed to commence action against all persons and organizations cited in the Ministerial Committee report in respect of financial and administrative improprieties, as well as retrieval of monies to the state. Conclusion. It should be noted that the committee admitted certain constraints it faced, including limited time for investigations and non-availability of vital documentation. These constraints should have been taken into consideration to ensure that all persons and organizations mentioned in the report are treated fairly. Problem. This is supposed to be the action paper covering the final report.
Right.
We are still being told of the inadequacy of the committee's work and the report. So necessary. The minister, when he was receiving the report, if they knew that all these inadequacies existed, why couldn't they give them extended time to finish it? In spite of all that, the matter is given to the PV or being committee or team to work on. Post that work, we are still being told of this inadequacy and constraints. You create credibility problems.
I see.
For yourself and for this exercise. So unnecessary. Now, beyond this, you've handed over to that AGC department, police CID, and Yoko. And I agree with Prof. That's where now the matter should be. Any status reports or progress report should be coming from those ends. The presidency, in the first place, should have been insulated from this whole exercise. The minister had the authority. Other agencies had done something, nobody did anything. The minister had done its work. If there were institutional aspects, legislative or systemic aspects that the president needed to know, it did not require the report being sent to the president in a formal way. A separate report on those institutional things, which are also here, and they are very important. The legislative instruments, the institutional things are critical for a long-term solution to this malaise. Those were to be distinct from the acts of corruption and criminality. Okay, so here we are. What we need to know, and I'm glad that you said you have a client in that. What we need to know now is to track. But whilst we are tracking as journalists, the institutions involved, I believe, in the interest of transparency, greater transparency, must be forthcoming with information. Right. Who have been arrested, who have been charged, who are on bail, which issues are they dealing with? The contracts and things, some of them, to be honest, I'm not too sure those institutions can even deal with them the way it should be dealt with. Otherwise, those in government who initiated those contracts ought to be part of those being interrogated and interviewed.
Be careful you don't put sand in the Ioko's Gary and in the same time empower lawyers for those institutions in the manner you're making those comments.
And last point, some of the service providers, subsequently, I cited documentation that shows that indeed, if some of those things had been considered, perhaps some of the findings and the report may not have been put the way it was put.
Thank you very much.
How are you going to manage that?
Thank you very much, Abdul Malik. And this show is brought to you by the kindest sponsorship of Bank of Africa, strong as a group and close as a partner. MTN, everywhere you go. Lipton Tea, inspiration flowing from nature. And Valex Lease Equipment, your affordable document management solutions company. Now, Mr. Minister, I'd like us to take it from the JIDA corruption matter and still find a way of weaving in the government's ability or readiness to fight this canker called corruption that is eating African countries, including ours. There are those who say that the AG's department's statements, if that is what they really have stand by, that it is the government agencies or departments that entered the contracts that can cancel the contracts, because the recommendation is that they should cancel about 6 of the contracts. And the committee did its value for money assessment and discovered that these contracts, we didn't get any value for money for them. Instead, we are losing millions of Ghanaian cedis every month because of these contracts. The Attorney General says, it's not our job. Go see those who entered them.
But did they really say that?
That's what the Joy News report said 3 days ago, and we have not had any reaction from the Attorney General's department.
Then it stands. Okay.
Thank you very much, and good morning to your viewers and listeners. Corruption is endemic in our society. It's endemic in Ghana, it's endemic in Africa. There's corruption everywhere. Who rightly said, corruption started in the days of, Adam. And we must continue to fight corruption wherever, it pops its head. It is probably going to be difficult to have a corruption-free society. I have not seen it anywhere. There's no country you can point to and say, this is a corruption-free society and this is the country that we should all, try to emulate. But it still doesn't make corruption acceptable. What the former president was saying is the same thing that everyone else has been saying. You may have your views on himself or his administration, but we have a serious problem of corruption in our society. It didn't start with this government. We've had corruption since independence. The question for me is that are we making progress in reducing corruption? Government after government, are we making progress in reducing corruption?
And your answer to that is?
And my answer to that is that probably not. Probably not, but governments have been making efforts. But you see, when corruption becomes endemic in your society...
You say governments have been making efforts?
Yes.
Unfortunately, the people can't see the fruits of those efforts.
Well, I believe, I haven't heard of any government that has come to power and said that I am for corruption. And that itself is fighting corruption.
We have had ridiculous accountability offices in presidencies set up in this country.
Absolutely.
Because it shows that the politicians are not committed to really fighting it.
Well, I'm sure you may say that maybe the commitment is not enough. But you see, the thing with corruption is that when it becomes endemic in your society, there are certain things that can just pass and you wouldn't even consider it corruption. There are certain things being done that people don't see it as they are being corrupt because it becomes, sort of a second to their nature. If we sit down critically and think about the things that we all do, look, in the corporate world, and mostly in advanced countries, and even in some advanced governments, if you receive a gift, you must actually register that gift. Okay, that this so and so is a client of mine, gave me a bottle of beer. It's the same with other countries, so in some countries. It is not done just for the fun of it, but it is a way of checking corruption, that you think twice before you receive a gift. You see, corruption can be progressive. You get a client or somebody you are working with, trying to look for a contract, comes to your office, to visit. The next thing is, oh, can we have lunch? He or she goes and buy you lunch. The next thing is, oh, I went to London, on my way back, I brought you 2 shirts and 2 ties. The next thing is, it turns to an envelope, take it for the children. And you are gradually being sucked into that corruption. And then you get into a position where you are now to make a decision. Then what do you do?
In the countries you refer to, in England, in the UK, they have an act that tells you exactly what to do. In Ghana, Shraj has sought to do a bit about it to assist. But it doesn't appear we don't have any biting law to fight it and to tell some of the public officers what they can and cannot do.
Absolutely. You see, if we get the structures right, some of the pressures that we put on our president and our politicians to deal with corruption will not even be necessary, because we have the right structure. You see, when I've been following this Gideton, one thing that came to mind is that, it looks like people are saying, oh, the president must act, the president must do this. And I'm asking myself, don't we have laws in this country that deals with these kind of things? And that, can't we follow due process? And where people have done wrong, they must be.
But Kwaku just said the president brought himself in.
That's what I'm saying, that sometimes the kind of pressures that comes to these kind of things is because we are not allowing the structures to work. And then some of these are knee-jerk reactions that, okay, we must act to make the people realize that, but if the systems are there, you don't have to. It looks as if now the case is rather moving to where it should have started. Interestingly, my prayer and hope is that whatever happens, whichever process we choose, in the end, if people have done wrong, they must be punished. We need to have this kind of deterrent. When we get this kind of issues, we need to deal with them and to be seen to be dealing with them so that others will not do the same again.
You're a minister. What car did you drive to this program today?
What car did I drive?
Is it your official car?
It's my official car, yes.
Why do you drive it on a Saturday to this program, which is not part of your official business?
Well, I'm sure you've called me here because I'm a minister. I'm sure you've called me here because I'm a minister. Otherwise, so I'm here on official duties, not just sitting in the office.
I'm asking. The president says that some of you, when you are going to see your doctor, which is not official business, you drive that car and you take a motorcade.
I don't do that.
But the president himself drives himself to his doctor.
I have never used a motorcade in my life. I don't intend to use one. And I use my official car when I'm doing an official duty. I will not drive my official car on a weekend when I'm doing my own stuff.
All right.
But anything official, I think I'm here because I'm the Deputy Minister of Finance.
That is so.
So I'm on official duty. I am here to speak on behalf of the government that I work for. So I consider that official.
I see.
Just to
the president also, just a bit about that too. The president also spoke about, prepaid meters. Do you use one?
I don't live in a government bungalow.
You don't live in a government bungalow? Okay.
And I pay my own bills.
You're looking forward to live in one, right?
I haven't considered it.
Oh,
it's almost a year now. I haven't considered it.
You're comfortable with taking the allowance for it instead?
I have not taken any allowance for housing.
Why is that?
I mean, I'm too busy serving my country, to be honest with you. I mean, there are certain things that we don't have to claim everything. I mean, I was living in my house before I became a minister. It doesn't mean that I have to leave my house and go and live in a government bungalow if I'm comfortable. I don't know if you've moved house before. The whole idea of even packing your things and moving your own family, can be
or perhaps
a bit
what
of a
Parliament does for you is sufficient, because that's also big money.
Well, I don't think, the money I spend on my house is many times, over. I mean, I have worked for over 20 years before coming into politics. This is my first time in politics.
So as far as you're concerned, this government is very committed to the fight against corruption. Again, I ask that.
So,
I ask that the people are looking for the results. They want to see where are the signs. You speak about the corruption that's almost all of us get involved in very little
which
ways.
we don't think about.
Which you don't think about.
We are doing anything
and
wrong.
I'm sure almost every Ghanaian.
And we jump quickly to talk about other people's corruption without examining little things that
the corruption that is eating this country and getting us into debts. And you see, almost everybody has a story to tell, especially when they have dealt with a state institution. And just 2 days ago, I have a client who is supposed to go and get court record for a new judge who has taken over a matter to see where we came to in the matter to proceed. And she's been chasing the record for 2 months now. And you know what? One other lawyer goes, what the lawyer is told? That lady has been coming here, she doesn't do anything. And that lawyer says, okay, take this for lunch and take care of it. And I'm told it's almost ready.
These are the problems we are facing in this country. And it's everywhere. And it has become part and parcel of our everyday life. People are collecting money for jobs that they get paid for. Look, if you go to a supermarket right now and park your car, the guy who waves the flag to get you in and out, who has been put there, paid to do so, expect you to give them money. You also think you should give them money. These are some of the things that we are doing that we don't even stop and think about it. That, you know, there was one guy, I gave him money once and I said, this is the last time I'm giving you money. I'm not supposed to give you money for doing this. And anytime I go there, I never give him anything.
Tips are allowed,
because tips are allowed. But you see, it's not become tips anymore. That's why I say corruption can be progressive. It's like taking the lunch, taking the shirt and the tie, ending up with an envelope, and then you are faced with making a decision. We have to fight corruption. I don't really care who says it, but it should be our collective responsibility. And people who are doing certain things in this country that is affecting government and government expenditure, when we find them, we must give them the necessary punishment to deter others from doing the same.
Right. Thank you very much. Now, Doc, I want you to tell me what indicators you are looking at to embolden you in the manner you speak, the right way that you speak. And I've gotten text messages, people saying they like the way you speak, so straightforward and you are candid. But I'm asking myself, what are the indicators that you are using to say you can't believe that we are making any progress in the fight against corruption?
Well, I've been away maybe too long. 30 years living in overseas, fighting discrimination in every corner. You have to be twice as good to be considered the same way as a white person. And when you go through all of that, integrity becomes very, very important, because people are looking for reasons to disqualify you anyway. And so you have to work harder. And then I come home, the Honorable Minister was saying that if the structures are there, the fact is they are not there. That is the problem. And I keep saying the Constitution is flawed. If the structure of the Constitution that determines the laws that follow does not say that if you do this, this happens, if you do that, that happens, then what do? We are operating the system as safe.
No, but don't we have that? We have our criminal code. It says this. People know that, you don't steal, and they steal.
But look at this situation. Even the Attorney General is making the argument, that's not my job. Whose job is it? You are the #1 lawyer of the country. You say this is not your job. Look, if I owe you money, you can contract a collection company to get the money from me. That is by law. So what is he talking about? My problem is this. Look, as we do these things, it is not isolated. JIDA has spent, from the last one I read 1 billion cedis, about $500,000. This is not small money, especially when our government actually goes to the international market to borrow 250,000. That makes no sense at all. Why don't you look to how you spend what you have? Instead of always going out, you don't pay attention to how people are doing these things, and then you don't have enough money, you go and borrow some more. That in itself encourages this corruption, because it means that when you need money, you can go and get some more so you don't have to worry about what you have. The point is this: we are bad. I remember talking to President Mills and about these issues, about the single spine. This is right when he started. I told him, Mr. President, why did you increase...
When did you meet him?
On the phone. We talked on the phone before I came to Accra.
All right.
Why did you increase the cocoa price so dramatically? He says, well, the farmers need the money. I say, yes, cassava farmers also need the money. Then he said, well, there's corruption at the border. I said, of course there's corruption at the border. What do you expect? And he was quiet for a long time, you know, like 1 minute without talking. I said, Mr. President, you should assume that if people can steal and get away with it, they will steal. And so we operate government from the premise that human beings are bad. James Madison says, if men were angels, no government would be needed. You have to assume they are bad. And so when they do bad things, you shouldn't be surprised. It is the law that is supposed to force them to do what is right. Well, he says, well, at the border there, we increase the price so that it's not attractive. And I said, what about the agents? He says, well, they are the ones who are doing the thing.
Some will say for the laws, we have the laws existing in a large measure, but it's about the implementation, enforcement.
Well, yes, that's
because the policeman who is supposed to enforce the law feels that he's not getting sufficient by the end of the month, and the only way to make do is to get some 5 cedis.
I agree. We have the laws, but it's not written properly. I can cite you examples in the Constitution, what I call flaws. I mean, you know, we were talking about the police shoot to kill, killing innocent people. Look, the Constitution says if a policeman shoots you by accident, he cannot be prosecuted. Maybe we have not looked at these. It's in there. Right? I talked about this yesterday.
Okay. Right. You know, myself and Doc, we've had an argument on the Constitution and its issues before on Kofi Owusu's program on Ultimate Radio in Kumasi 106.9. But I want you to relax the Constitution and just look at the issue in the most practical manner.
With respect to what you were talking about.
Right.
You have the law, yes? If you can commit a crime and get away with it, you do it. What stops you? It's because somebody is watching. It's called undercover, right? If you are a minister, honorable here, somebody comes to your office with a brown envelope. The law says you should not accept gifts like that. You know better. You know what it is. You know it's bribery. And you take it. And nothing happens. Why not? But if you take it and you don't know the person was undercover BNI, and his button was a camera, and it's recorded all of this, including the serial number of the money he put in there.
And as has recorded some of these and giving them to the states, we're yet to see how effective the results have been. Thank you very much, Doc. Now, thank you. We are very privileged. We have Dominic Ayene, who is the Deputy Attorney General and Minister for Justice, on the line. Good morning, Senior, and welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Samson.
Great. First of all, can you confirm for us that the Attorney General's Department has said categorically that you do not have the mandate and cannot cancel the contracts that the committee recommends should be cancelled, and that you cannot take processes to retrieve the monies that ought to be retrieved?
Well, Larry, I can confirm that the explanation that was given informally to your Manasseh Azure regarding the issue of cancellation was simply that the Attorney General is not party to any of the contracts that were signed by the NDAs with the service providers as far as the JIDA saga is concerned. It is basic contract law that you cannot purport to cancel a contract to which you are not party. So the ministries, departments, and agencies that sign the contracts can cancel those contracts. But the Attorney General can advise on the legal steps that need to be taken in order to cancel for either non-performance or for breaches of any term or conditions of the contract. Now, this was the explanation that was given to your Manasseh Azure off the record regarding the role of the Attorney General in the civil aspects of the JIDA, saga. There was no categorical statement to the effect that the Attorney General cannot retrieve monies if so instructed. In fact, the directive of the President given to the Attorney General, includes the aspect of retrieval of the monies. But we need the evidence from IOCO and the other investigative authorities in order to be able to say, for instance, that someone took monies that were not due to them, and therefore those monies ought to be returned to government chest.
Okay, so if I understand you,
yes.
You're saying that if you're instructed by the ministries, you will advise them what ought to be done. And again, that when the EOCO or the CID are done with their job, it will come before you and you will take action in respect of the criminal aspects. Is that so?
Right. Not only in respect of the criminal aspects. For instance, I was going to explain that we did say to him that in the report there are statements to the effect that certain things were not done, yet monies were paid for those things. Certain activities that were supposed to be done by the service providers were not done, and yet monies were paid.
Right.
And I said, in order for us to have a rock-solid case in court in the civil matter, and even in the criminal matter, there may be the need for further forensic audit for us to be certain how much, is due the government for, non-performance. And he pointed out to me that some of the service providers had agreed, conceded that they did not deliver, and yet monies were paid to them. And I said, yeah, with respect to those statements, there's no, once they themselves admit, okay, they will be made to refund those monies on their own admissions. And you as a lawyer, you know that if once we have those admissions, we can obtain judgment on admissions.
That's correct.
So
once again, you are saying,
CI 47.
You are saying
there
that
was no categorical statement that we will not recover the money.
And again, you are saying that you made this very statement, the very last statement, about taking the money, retrieving the money on admission to the journalist, but he refused to disclose that as part of his report.
No, I didn't go this far because you are a lawyer, and I know that there are lawyers on the panel. That is why I am going this far. What I said was that we can advise on the steps, that that can be taken in order to be able to retrieve the monies.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much for your intervention. I think it's been very useful. But if you can spare just a minute or two to tell us, because of where you sit in the structure of government, this government's posture towards the fight against corruption, is it winning it?
Something.
Ambush.
Kokubako says this is ambush, but I think it is a friendly ambush.
Fact, I was going to tell you that you are entrapping me, actually.
I see.
It's a difficult fight, right? I mean, my background. I come from a civil society background. I come from an academic background. In fact, I was the one who authored the Transparency International report on judicial corruption. That report was published both nationally and internationally. And I do know that the fight against corruption is a huge fight for any government. Whether we are going to win that fight, I think the jury is still out there. But from where I sit and the steps that we are taking and intend to take, I believe that ultimately this government will win the fight against corruption.
Thank you very much indeed for your time. Dominic Ayine is the Deputy Minister.
What he said was predictable, wasn't it?
What he said was predictable, okay. Is the Deputy Minister in charge of the Ministry of the Attorney General's Department and the Ministry for Justice. Thank you very much indeed for your time. This is Newsfile, brought to you by the candid sponsorship of MTN Everywhere You Go and Lipton Tea, inspiration flowing from nature. We are also sponsored by Valex Lease Equipment, your affordable document management solutions, and Bank of Africa, strong as a group and close as a partner. I've got some of your messages that you have been sending here Okay, for those of you who are asking, where is MPP representation? I'm sorry to announce to you that we are not doing NPP, NDC politics here, so forgive us. You're not interested in that. This one says, Samson, please ask Godwin whether he is Nabia, and I think that should be on the side of it. Nabia, whether you went to Navasco, which I also went, and I know you didn't. You went to Notre Dame. That was a privileged school when we were there. It was. Still is. Okay. Okay. Now, Henry Mann Pama says, Rawlings may not have the moral standing to talk about corruption, but I think it is okay for him to help correct the wrong. Isaac Brian Ofori says, can JDM fight corruption? That's a question we're also asking, and you are just also simply asking the question back. Those of you who have questions, loads of them, on the economy, will deal with it, and the minister is here to help us with that. Kwasi Ferguson says, Kweku Bako and facts. Anyways, it's obvious this Jida rot will get nowhere once those affiliated still hold their respective offices. Greetings to my lecturer, Lawyer Adawini. Thank you very much. Now, Ibrahim Chopper sends in this one from Tamale, and he says, the current revelation of the true state of the Ghanaian economy, which the NPP has said during the 2012 election, is clear vindication of the NPP's position. Okay, right. I'll take your issues or your questions and commentaries on the economy very soon. So for now, we're dealing with corruption and the fight against corruption. Now, there's Kofi who is sending this message from Thailand. He said, J.J. Rawlings has shown the picture clear to John Mahama in the quest to fight against corruption. John Mahama will have to be smart in getting rid of those around him so he can have a clean and safe country. I'll return and ask Kukubaku, there's a question about, is President Rawlings really helpful in the manner he goes about his innuendos? He doesn't name anybody. He appears to know people. He doesn't name them. Haruna Osman says, the former president always seems to have information no one else has. He should be straight with Ghanaians to help us all. Samuel Brian Boabeng Awoshi says, President Mahama is afraid to release the market fire report. Now he's talking about fighting corruption, that some of the crookish monsters surrounding him are part of. President Mahama lacks political will to fight corruption. Abubakari Lukman sends this one. He says, Ghana's economy is now, right, we'll deal with the economy subsequently. So don't worry, keep your questions on the economy. We'll come back and take them. We'll take a break here. I'll return to continue with the discussion. This is Newsfile, your most authoritative news analysis show. You're welcome back to the show. I'm Samson Ladia Yanini, and now you're one of the kind. Yes, everyone is different, even with how you use your phone. We understand how unique you are with different tastes and preferences. So whatever your likes, MTN has something special just for you. Dial *515# *515# today, and let's treat you to awesome offers uniquely designed for you. From airtime, SMSs, and data, MTN just for you, uniquely yours. Follow MTN on Twitter at MTN Ghana. Welcome to the new world. MTN everywhere you go. I'm telling you about Valex. Are you still buying printers, scanners, and photocopiers in every single office of yours? That's not being smart. So Valex is inviting you to come and lease a modern, multifunctional equipment which can scan, copy, and print at the same time. Don't you like that? There is no fixed rental charge. You only pay as you copy or print, and scanning is absolutely free. You can scan directly to email and open with pen drive for free, copy and print wireless to the same equipment. And the good news is that the toners, the cartridges, repairs, and maintenance are all supplied free of charge, and they are nationwide. Locate Valex at Osu Akoje near XFM or email them at valex@yahoo.co.uk or call them on 054 048 2857 or 054 048 2838. Valex, affordable document management solutions. Now, sometimes things just happen, but this, it's made for you. Now, you're on broken patronage of their responsive and thoughtful insurance packages has earned Star Assurance the prestigious CIMG Insurance Company of the Year Award 2012. Yes, you did it, and this is to you, their cherished customer. Their dedicated team will continue to offer you cutting-edge insurance policies that give you peace of mind and power to achieve your set goals. They work to protect your properties and businesses when the expected and unexpected happen with their branches located all over Ghana. They are focused on building partnerships that last a lifetime. Talk to Star Assurance on 030-2240-632. That's 030-240-632. Or visit Star Assurance at www.starassurance.com. Star Assurance, your CIMG Insurance Company of the Year 2012. Star Assurance, your solid partner. Now, we'll move on to the economy, but I had already put a question, a final one to Abdul Malik about, there are so many messages. They are saying Rollins should stop all of this. He's fond of that. He should name people because it's not helping.
Yeah. See, let me read an excerpt from his speech. He says, Mr. Chairman, Ghana is plagued by a crippling ostrich mentality.
That's loaded.
Somehow, everyone knows what goes on, but no one seems ready to admit that there is a problem. In fact, the one who admits there is a problem is often ridiculed by his peers. How many of us in this room have developed the capacity to admit that there is corruption in our local government system, or in the heart of government, or even in this university? Why is our capacity to speak the truth so poor that we let wrong pass unchallenged? The reason is simple. Perpetuating anti-development tendencies enhances the get-rich-quick attitude of the greedy ones, those of us who have access to power and privilege. Admitting that there is a problem might expose the pathways for illegal wealth and oppression of the people. On my own, I have tried extremely hard to confront this ostrich mentality by speaking up when the problem is occurring, not after it has occurred.
Right.
This is not an easy task. It is a crusade that must be embarked upon. Speak up, admit when problems are occurring, so that as a society, we can expose the cancer of corruption and apply heavy doses of chemotherapy to eliminate all the cancerous cells in our society and body politics. Fine speech. Where are the better and further particulars?
And he added that because he says he has an intense love for the people of this country and this country.
If he's not careful, he would cast a certain picture of being a perpetual agitator without a cause or a destination. He said these things over and over again. We journalists are even challenged by a certain ethical standard that provide something of evidential value to back your allegations. He's a founder of a party, the ruling party, and former president of head of state and president of 19 years standing. He must know a lot about this country, and he must be in a situation where he can access a lot of information. But the perpetuity how he goes about it, without providing that thing of evidential value, will soon reduce whatever he says to nuisance value. And with those who say that either he keeps quiet, or he comes with better and further particulars to drive this crusade that he's asking us to embark on.
Okay. Before we finish, you also said you had a question.
Yes.
To who? Is it
I had
to
a-
me or Kweku?
No,
Because
I had a
I'm not a
question for
participant.
I had a question for the Deputy
Oh.
Attorney General.
All right.
He came on to explain to us what needs to happen before he can do something. That is the only way he can do something. You understand? I mean, how can the Attorney General's office investigate anything without bringing in the agencies that were involved in it? What is a waste of time from my point of view. That is the only way to do it. But the Attorney General's office spearheading this investigating, directing it, supervising it, gives it more credibility. This one has not brought the papers we need. Where is it? We need this by next week. That is what they are supposed to do. And so there was no need at all for them to come and tell us that we can't do this because we were not privy or were not part of the signing of this contract.
He's telling you of a basic principle in law. And
Well,
you
yes.
want us to work as a lawful country.
Exactly. But it is a given. It's understood. It's not something he has to explain because that is the only way you can proceed.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Amako Ba. And a lot of people still talking about how you speak your mind in the manner you do it. Right. Now, let's...
I hope that's me.
Yeah, it's a compliment.
Now, let's move on to the next and also another very important issue. And some will say, but for corruption, we would not have gotten here. And let's face it, corruption is part of the reason our kitty is always suffering. And you heard by way of introduction how I put it. I said our collective purse bleeds heavily, though we have not stopped paying taxes. So I'm in my little non-economic, financial educated mind, I'm asking what is going on because we are paying the taxes and even paying more. Yet we are told that pensioners can't be paid because the central bank has no cash. SNIT has issued checks, but there are no cash, so it can't go on. Now, I was listening to radio and I came across these sounds on Joy News, where young men and women who are working, trying to live by lawful means at Kwame Nkrumah Circle spoke about what I call the gut-wrenching stories of how they had to manage 2 cedis a day. And I asked myself, my God, how does that work? 2 cedis a day. Some of them said they had to skip lunch so they can have supper. I'm not sure that's even balanced diet. They don't think about that. And that's the basis on which Joy FM went to the street to speak to them. And then we are told from Jabing in the eastern region that a 45-year-old Victor Dagadu, God bless his soul, God forgive him, he hanged himself after days of complaining about economic hardship. Now, I have tried to say, I think these may be isolated. They may not have any direct link with the current economic situation because they will always be with us. The bad part is the group I call the Global Economic Examiner, Fitch, they have downgraded us from B-. We were negative some time ago, where we were, I think we were somewhere, and then they brought us negative, and now we have a B instead of a B-. And we are being told that means it's going to be difficult for us to borrow. And yet we know that this government is trying to borrow to solve our problems. And I ask myself the question, you have continued to tell us that the public wage bill is taking so much of the money. And I'm doing some calculation. The government employs only 500,000 of Ghanaians. We are 24 million people. The government employs only 500,000. This 500,000 is swallowing up 70% of the money that all of us should benefit from. I think that is absurd, isn't it?
Thank you. First of all, I think if you allow me, I'll take a few minutes to explain this Fitch and this rating,
right?
So that we can have a good understanding of what
Great.
this rating
is the reason you are here.
Yeah, this rating is about. As you well know, Fitch is a global rating agency. Their work is basically to credit rate countries, companies, and product mainly in the capital market like bonds. Okay, now they have a system of doing this rating. And they assign the ratings to some kind of an alphabetical scale from AAA to a D. So basically what that means is that if you are a AAA country or a AAA company, you are at the very top. What they call the best, the best quality means you are stable, you are reliable.
And that brings you a lot of benefits.
Absolutely. And there are very few countries, mostly the advanced countries. When you are a D country.
Where is US?
US had a AAA, but they've had some minuses every now and then.
I wanted to know because I think presently US owes about 17 trillion.
Yes, but there are so many factors. Okay, because if you look at US owes, US also lends money. So you have to look at, all this. That's why usually it's not a good idea to be comparing, countries. You cannot say US had more debt than Ghana, therefore we are okay.
Yeah, because as far as we know, we have just about 20 billion?
In terms of
how much we owe?
Oh, about 40, yes, 40 billion.
40?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead with your explanation with Fitch.
So basically what that is that you have this scale. But on that scale, you also, in between that AAA and D, there are different categories of ratings. So for instance, you have AAA, AA, A, triple B, you go to BB, and then you go to B where we are placed by Fitch now. And then you have triple C, you have a double C, you have a C before you go to a D. So it's quite a stretch. And even in between that, there are further breakdown in categories where they call something intermediate modifiers. That's where they add the plus and the minuses. So sometimes you see A plus, A minus, and then they have what is called an outlook. So you can be called B plus and then have a positive outlook or a negative outlook. So it is not, you just don't move from, say, B to triple C. There are other, and then it has different implications. Okay, now there are other agencies, two other big agencies. Standard & Poor and Moody's.
Right, Moody's.
In fact, Standard & Poor are the two big ones. They control about 85% of that market, or 80% of that market. Fitch, I think, is only about 15%. But the three of them, when you put them together, control 95% of this ratings, market. So they are equally important. Their ratings also follow the same alphabetical, and they are similar, but there are also differences. For instance, Moody doesn't use pluses. They use 1 for plus, 2 for, minus, and then they use, 2 for stable, and then they use 3 for minus. So it's not usually straightforward, to compare them. Now, Standard & Poor already rates us as B. So the market has already factored in Ghana's B ratings. Now, Fitch had us as B plus, so that's where the B comes in. B plus. So even within B, you have 3 different categories. You have B plus, B, and a B minus before you move out of that, the B range. So they put us as B plus, negative outlook. There has to be 3.
Right.
B plus, negative outlook, which means that your outlook looks negative, you are likely to be downgraded.
Right.
Okay. Now they have moved us from the B plus, negative outlook, to B, which is the next step you move, with stable outlook. Okay. So basically, if we are to go down again, we were going to go to B negative. Now, when you only become vulnerable, or what they call, you are currently vulnerable when you get to triple C. When you are at B plus, B, or B minus, when you are in the B, or the 3B, it means that you could become vulnerable. So that is where we are. We could become vulnerable, but currently we have the capacity to meet our financial commitments. But any adverse economic activity could render us or impair us from being able to meet this.
That's a whole lot of big English.
Yeah.
The ordinary Ghanaian wants the bottom line. Means things are getting worse. And on the international market, we are not good. That's the point.
But it is important that I explain this because, you know, we just jump on.
Right.
We've been downgraded.
It's very educative and I enjoy it. Yeah.
We need to understand these things. And more so the ordinary man on the street. Because when you say you've been downgraded, it can be so frightening. But we have to look at, we've been downgraded to what? Where were we? What is the implication to the ordinary Ghanaian? Now,
so what do you understand to be in the implication? We know that, for example, one is that now borrowing is going to be very expensive for us.
One of the implications is that the cost of borrowing, that is when you go to the capital market, could be slightly, expensive depending on where you are. But I said, when you are in the Bs, whether it's B plus, B minus, or B, they are pretty much in the same category, and that the difficulties, more or less, cannot be clearly differentiated.
Right.
Even though one is, you can say one is worse than the other. Now, what Fitch is saying is that, don't forget, not too long ago, when we went to the capital market to do the Eurobond, we had to be rated by these agencies. And that is when Standard and Poor came with B stable, Moody came with B1, which means B plus, and then Fitch came with what they came with. This was just about 2 or 3 months ago. Now, to come back, and sometimes we don't just have to take what these credit agencies tell us. Because, look, we are the managers of our own economy, and we have to try to understand our own economy better than someone else is telling us.
Right.
Somebody comes to us 3 months later after they have rated us to say that now we are downgrading you. Now, let's look at what has happened between when we went to the Eurobond market. That some of the things that they are talking about, which is still the issue, is to do with our current wage bill. There is no question about that. A number of things contributed towards our 12% deficit that we are still trying to bring down. But the one that is still outstanding, that the result or whatever we are doing now is going to be gradual. We have dealt with the subsidy issue, which is part of the deficit issue, by removing subsidies on petroleum product. PURC have come out, even though it was not 100%, but also we've gone down that route. We have done some kind of a substitution or swap in terms of our debt profile, because we were borrowing expensively and we were borrowing on the short term. When you borrow on the short term, it means that maturity also comes, quicker. And that has a cost. Okay? We have changed all this. We have taken a lot of tough decisions by this government since the beginning of the year than I can ever remember. So a lot has been done by this government. But you see, when you are doing these things, the impact on macroeconomics does not happen overnight. It is not going to happen in 3 months. That is what the minister said, that the adjustment or the realignment that we are doing is a 3-year program. And that within 3 years, this is what we expect to achieve. Now, if Fitch decide that they are just going to rate us on this year or rate us within 3 months, then I'm sure they have the right to do so.
Right.
But if we believe in what we are doing, and we believe that we will get the necessary results. I mean, quite recently, we said part of the 3-year plan is to bring this 12% deficit, which is not acceptable, to 9%. Indication, as we stand, says that we might not be able to get the 9%, but we will be between 9 and 10. Some have predicted about 9.5. For me, these things are always predictions. But if we can achieve 9.5%, we have made progress. And hopefully, within the 2 years, we'll be able to bring it to where we want it to be. We predicted that we will do a growth of about 8% we've had difficulties at the beginning of the year with energy. And for predictions to be that our growth will be around 7.5%, at the back of the difficulties that we have had in terms of energy, and that the production or the productivity is now coming through, for me, it's also a good result. There are people who say the growth that we are having at the moment is a jobless growth. There is an element of truth in that, because much of the growth is probably coming from the energy sector. But don't forget, the energy sector also employs people. So if there's an expansion there, then people are being employed there. Now, what will happen if our growth becomes, if I can use the word, or I can create a word, becomes a jobful growth? When we are doing 7.5% on a jobless growth, what will happen if we begin to do a jobful growth?
Right.
The short to medium term of Ghana's economy is strong. Ghana is not broke. We are facing short-term challenges, which is the wage bill. The wage bill at the moment is taking 70% of our tax revenue, and that is simply not acceptable.
Right. The workers are actually on the street, they're asking for more. But see, so some will ask, look, we put you there as a government to solve the problems, and we are supposed to be able to detect, anticipate, and to act. Somehow, like Rollins would say, the ostrich mentality, as if we're not aware, or as Dr. Barima would say, we're playing propaganda with the economy. Otherwise, someone who has a question, why are we here where we are, and why are we acting as if now it is coming to us as a surprise? So tell me, is Fitch MPP or the donor agencies that are withdrawing their supports, as well, or their aid, just facing the harsh realities of the time? When Barima mentioned some of these issues ahead, we put his PhD in question. He was attacked and told that, look, what you're talking about is wrong. Now we are faced with it. It means you didn't plan, you didn't anticipate, you just, wallowed in propaganda about the economy.
Fitch is not MPP. Fitch is a professional body doing a professional job. The point I'm trying to make here is that Fitch is basing their rating analysis on what I consider to be a narrow path.
Right.
And that if they look at the much broader picture, or this 3-year program that I'm talking about, they will begin to see that the future of this country is actually not doomed. Fitch rated us in February. 8 months now, they've rated us again. They did a rating, when we went to the bond market, rated our bond. Fitch could be coming again in 6 or 8 months to rate us either back or worse. And that is something that we all have to, live to see. But what I'm trying to say is that I have outlined here measures that we have taken. And as I said, we have done more. I mean, I don't know, but if somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, that we have taken more tough decisions, removing of subsidies and things that we have done, than probably, any government in the
okay, it's for good reason that I gave you so much space and time to speak. I'll return to you for the very final word on this. But, Doc, yes. I have a friend who gives a very graphic example to tell why some of these things are happening to us, African countries. This friend says, he was on a BA flight from London to DC. He met UK's finance minister, George Osborne. He sat in the business class and carried his own bags at Dulles Airport. Another finance minister from Africa was in first class. He had 2 people to carry his bags. They are both attending, at that time, they were both attending the IMF autumn meeting. And he asked a question, you can bet which one of them will be begging for money. Yes. That's the irony. And then another friend tells me about a certain situation at the passport office in Ghana. This is where government is looking for revenue. There are big men, big women, big people in the country who can afford the express service. They don't pay for the express service. They pay for the regular service. But guess what? The ordinary Ghanaian who struggles to make the money to pay for the express service doesn't get the express delivered. It takes months. But that man who should have paid for express pays for regular and gets his passport the same day.
He gets the super express service.
Exactly, super express.
Well, sometimes I empathize with the minister because, I mean, this mess was long in coming. And so he just inherited part of it. My problem is that even with that, we are still not doing a good job. You see, unlike us, the Fitch and the Standard & Poor and all the others, you see, they have a business to do. And what makes their business profitable is that their clients and customers believe in their reports. If I'm an investor coming to Ghana, I'll read their report about the country and assume that it is genuine and correct.
Yes, like programs like these
Exactly.
are rated in this country.
Exactly.
And presently, this particular program is rated the peak every Saturday.
Exactly.
So
by Fitch?
No. It's rated to have no competition, and I'm telling you facts.
No,
yes, so no competition at all. Those who are trying can't even get to a house. And so you'd find that some people are asking, you're getting too many adverts on the show. Yeah. Sometimes you guys complain. But that's what the consumer wants.
Exactly. You know that, so you have to always strive to excel. This is why you get the advertisement, because more people are watching. What we have is, in Ghana, I said, it's not just the ministers. I mean, after all, the ministers don't come from the moon. It's us. We talk and talk and talk, and sometimes we think just the talking takes care of the problem. Look at what they say here. As we said, this is in February, when we revised Ghana's outlook, failure to set out and implement a credible consolidation plan. That is the problem. It's not how much you owe, but a credible consolidation plan. Tell us exactly what you're going to do to solve this problem. And if we see that it will work, fine. At least it means that you can pay us. But even that we are not able to do. We say 6%, it goes to 9%, it goes to 12%. And so then they're beginning not to believe in your figures. It is almost as if you are showing incompetence or purposely lying. You can't lie with this. They have agents right here. That is what we fail to see. They are not sitting in London to do this. They are here in Accra. World Bank, IMF, all of them are here. And so what you are doing, sometimes they find out about things we are doing even before we find out. I remember when it was the United Nations that says that Ghana has some people from Ivory Coast, Bagos people here, and we, the minister, said, no, that's not true at all. It turned out it was true. We didn't know, they knew. They are here. And so sometimes when we are doing these things, it's not how much we owe. It's how we set out to take care of the problem. The wage bill is going up. People are threatening to strike. Even now, it should be coming down. It's going up instead. And what are they supposed to do? Look, Honorable Minister says we can have joyful growth. Yes, but look at the picture. We increase energy tariffs, right? At the same time, gold prices come down. And what do you expect the mining companies to do? They are laying people off now. Yeah. So it's not joyful growth. Joyful growth is going in the opposite direction. Because when you increase that tariff, you should always keep in mind it is not just ordinary people who are going to use the electricity, like Dr. Bobby says that they should be using candles. You can't use candles to power generators and machines in the mining factories. I don't understand it. Right? When you do that, and the companies are already in trouble, and you raise it like this, you are forcing them out of business.
It may not be necessary, but I ought to say that Dr. Rekubrebe hasn't said exactly that we should be using candles. Well, he compares the prices, and some of us have raised problems with the comparison anyway. Okay, so just finish your point. I come to Mr. Adaone.
My point is this. Maybe we don't know this, but the way we do things will not work. I have said several times, this whole system is not ours. It's theirs. And we have to learn the rules that make it work. Learn it very well. That is the only time we can tweak it to fit ourselves. Now we're trying to change things when we don't even understand the thing. And so they come and say, we don't care about what you think. It's what we see.
Okay. You may be speaking in broader terms, but I'd like you to think around what solutions we should be looking at. The minister is telling us of a number of things that they are doing to make sure that we don't hit HIPIC. There are those who say we are just around HIPIC because when you get to, is it 50% of your GDP, yes. You hit HIPIC, and we are getting closer. Now, Godwin, and I like, you would discover that I try to use some very graphic, down-to-earth situations to tell the stories. We are being told that, for example, that the Bank of Ghana checks are bouncing. And I say, Jesus me, what's going on? That means we're in crisis.
Yes, it is revenue we need, and revenue comes from productive economic activities. And the question is, do we have such activities going on in a scale and in such a way as to bring us the level of revenue that we need to provide all these public services? Don't forget that the unemployment situation is very pervasive and very deep and mind-boggling. You have many, many people who are not working. They don't earn any income. They can't pay any tax. But they depend on many social facilities for their daily subsistence and other life activities. Who is catering for that? I mean, if you have to imagine that, just take our universities. Every 9 months, can you imagine the number of people that we produce? And all these people have to sit at home for 5, 6 years without having to engage in any economic activity. That is part of the problem. The other aspect has to do with the revenue leakage. Even with the little that we have, it
Leakage
leaks.
or wastage?
Well, let's say that wastage is part of the leakage. It's part of the problem. Okay, so these are the factors. And talking about the public sector wage bill, perhaps you may be suggesting, though not publicly, that we have to revisit the kind of measures that were implemented in the 1980s. Because you look at the number of people receiving huge salaries, then you ask, what productive activity do some of them contribute?
So what, should we be reducing salaries in this day to sort of, because everybody is being asked, to tighten up a bit, and some argue that we're talking about the public wage bill where you have 70% of the only 500,000 people who are employed by the state, eating up 70% of the tax revenue, and out of that number you have 30% who form the article, 70 or whatever, 71
yeah.
Beneficiaries. And they take, out of the 70, they take about 30% of that 70.
That is true.
And they include the ministers, all of those people.
Precisely so. And that is where we should be looking at. And the ghosts, who are on the payroll every day. We have this element of the ghost workers. They don't work, and the single spine salary they take. You know what that means? And even beyond that, if you've been following the judgment debt sole commissioner's activities, you just cannot imagine it. People are being paid 5 times what they are due. And that is just what has come into the public domain.
Criminal rape.
So, the wage bill, and talking about those who actually work and actually receive, may well just be an excuse, if I have to put it that way. Because the real problems are there. Even as you are not reducing salaries. You see the agitations every day. If you attempt it, what are you going to have?
So what do you say? Do we go beyond simply asking ministers to make sure they have prepaid meters and to go to the core of the issue and say this Article 71 holders who take 30% of the 70% of the wage bill, we should cut down how much they receive?
Well, if other sectors are being called upon to sacrifice, then the leaders must show the example that way. And we are talking about example of sacrifice, not to the extent where it will impede basic work. But you use the word wastage. That's a fact. It goes on. So I think that as part of the measures, the immediate measures, those are the things that we'll have to deal with. But for the revenue collection, is a problem, and the minister, is the best person to at least tell us what activities are going on there.
Kuku, as we discuss these issues, I think it's better to focus on the solutions, really. That should be the bigger picture that we should be looking at. I've heard the Valco boss, is a Charles Mensah, say that we need planning. We don't seem to really plan. So if we don't plan properly, we'll get into some of these problems.
And yet we have a National Development Planning Commission.
That's so.
Which is a constitutionally sanctioned body. So you ask yourself, what have they been doing? Recently, we were told that organization is also broke by one of the commissioners. That should reflect negatively on us, But I would not pretend to understand economics. I'm not an expert. In fact, I have no technical competence when it comes to some of these issues. But I feel it. Like Rollins said, he's not an expert in law, neither was he an expert in economics, but he's an expert in feeling hungry.
Right. Yes.
That was years ago, of course.
He knows where to go for his gari and beans.
This point about the wage bill, and I'm going to underscore some ignorance and lack of education on some of these matters. We hear that there was 500,000, 600,000 public sector employees are taking about 70% of the tax revenue. I'm sure the Deputy Minister said so. Yeah. I have a little problem with that projection. There's 500 or 600,000 employees. Do they have families? Do they impact on others in the society? So why are we, first of all, taking the 500, 600,000 out of the 25 million as if it stands on its own? I have a problem with that. I'm not economically educated in terms of these things, but I think they impact on many others. So please, let's be careful, or we turn that into a fallacy. The extended family system, even in our setting, tells me that straight away we should not be concentrating on only the 500,000. After all, they produce, they are productive, they do certain things. We have managers and supervisors in the various sectors who are supposed to or are required to supervise them working. Do they work? Do they produce? So we have to ask those questions. Are they, apart from the ghost, or unless we are being told that this 500,000, 600,000, and 1/3 of them are ghosts, they wouldn't work. There's no labor at the graveyard. So we have to determine these things properly before it's brought to the public domain as a way of explaining some of the difficulties and challenges we are having. I expect that maybe the minister will elaborate on some of these things. So here we are talking of the formal sector. The economy, there's a large informal sector out there too. What are we doing to it? What is the focus in terms of government intervention in redirecting, or I'm not sure how to put it, re-engineering this large informal sector for it to impact positively, productively on the economy? Otherwise, you see, all we are doing is that we are looking at some particular sectors and people and taxing and taxing and taxing. There's a limit to what you can do when it comes to that level of taxation. People can get dehydrated. They will not produce any resource. There's a limit. So again, I would want to be educated, informed. What are the initiatives that are being grown to make sure that the informal sector, which is so large in our context, because it comes back to the structure of the Ghanaian economy. Some of these problems will remain for a long time if we keep the economy structure the way it is. Despite that, even the one that we are dealing with, we have problems. You know, the debt profile. Until recently, until I heard the president come closer to accepting that, that caution ought to be considered. All I'd been hearing was government functionaries suggesting that we are far from HIPIC, and that because we are here to get to the 60% mark, it's no problem. Last week, we had the same discussion here, and I had to go back to the Hansard to show that before we got to HIPIC, the same trajectory of debate. Oh, they quoted Europe. And I was happy the Deputy Minister made a point that we shouldn't be comparing. But you see, Mr. Deputy Minister, until you said so, I had many government functionaries tell us that, oh, but the US is so indebted. Germany is so in. They did that comparison. Thank God you've shifted. The president has also shifted. So clearly it means that we have to take a critical look at how the rate of borrowing, of course, and then of course where we are putting that money, even the ones that we are borrowing. Money for, value for money, audit. No, so to be honest with you, we have a problem, a real challenge. This first thing, 2003, I remember it was 2003 at the request of Ghana government that Standard & Poor's came in to do an assessment and rated us B+, and Fitch rated us B with a positive or stable outlook. It remains so till recently. So it definitely means something isn't going right. Is it a cyclical thing? We make progress, or we are told we've made progress. Then within a matter of months or years, we come back to the old solution. I agree with my little ideological orientation. I know that the problem is more structural and institutional than it is. But we cannot continue sitting by doing things the same old way and think we would have any serious success. Last point. I'm happy that there's again a certain concession from the Deputy Minister, if I'm wrong, correct me, that it appears that there's a large measure of truth in the argument that we're having a jobless growth.
Yes.
Yes, but what time we produced 1.6 million jobs within a twinkle of an eye, within a year. Okay. You see, but what it means is that those jobs were not jobs that you can call sustainable or in the productive sectors. And that is why we are still talking of jobless growth. Again, what it means is that we should do an extension between propaganda and the reality. And this is why I think Bawumia had a point. Because of the partisanship of our politics, we did not see what he was suggesting. Economics cannot be unduly politicized. I am for that. We need to demystify it, depoliticize it, even though it's political. I mean politicization. I draw the extension between politicization and what is political. It's just like tribe and tribalism. That's an extension. So to be honest with you, if to build a consensus, truth, I believe truth, integrity and honesty, if are brought to bear on our discussions and government initiatives and programs, we'll make progress.
All right, we'll be talking about
inadequate.
He spoke about the bigger, measures that are being taken to stabilize the situation, but we want to also know the small, things that ought to be done to help, stabilize the situation. Mahama Isahaku writes, I think the economy has lost focus on its ability. The country has lost focus on its ability to stabilize the economy. Economics is all about scale of preference because of scarcity of resources. In Ghana, our demands are high and each government is expected to meet those demands within the shortest time. Thank you for your message. There's also someone who says that they talk about the single spine taking away so much, which it appears is being abandoned now, an argument which is being abandoned now by spokespersons for the government. It says that doesn't make sense, and it's a sheer blackmail of the poor worker, and so it should be stopped. Thank you for your messages there. Now, okay. Now, as I told you earlier, MTN Just For You is great. Try it and experience the best deals. Just dial star 515 hash, star 515 hash today, and then MTN will treat you to awesome offers uniquely designed for you from airtime, SMS, and data. MTN Just For You is uniquely yours. Just follow MTN on Twitter at MTN Ghana, and they welcome you to the new world. MTN everywhere you go. This is just to meet your every taste, whichever, however it is. And I've told you also about Valex. That is the truth of the matter. You don't need a photocopier, a scanner, a printer, all of that at the same time in all of your offices. Valex Lee says, get smart and just come lease a multifunctional equipment which can scan, copy, and print at the same time. There is no fixed rental charge. You only pay as you copy or print, and scanning is once again absolutely free. Toners, cartridges, repairs, maintenance are all supplied free of charge. They are all over the nation. Contact them at valex@yahoo.co.uk or call them 054 048 2857 or 054 048 2838. Valex Lease, affordable documents management solutions. And as always, my outfits, I think you like it. My outfits is brought to you by the kind sponsorship of Latida. I'll return to tell you a lot more about Latida, and they are just a call away, and they will bring you best, even better than what I'm wearing. You just ask them what you want, and they will bring it to you cheap and the best. We'll be right back after this break. You're on Newsfile. This is your most authoritative news analysis show. My guest, Abdul Malik Kwekubako, Jr., Editor-in-Chief of the New Crusading Guide newspaper. The Honorable Kweku Ricketts-Hagan, he's the Deputy Minister of Finance. Dr. Richard Mwakoba is a Senior Lecturer and Head of Political Science Department, Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. And Godwin Adawune is a lawyer and a practitioner and a lecturer of the law. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Now, I told you about Latida. Just call them 026-565-0918 or 020-433-6444. 020-433-6444. Just call them and make your orders. They will deliver to you. Best in African prints, linen, and dresses, but cheap, very cheap in price. Thank you very much indeed. Now, a few of your text messages. Abubakar Lukman says, Ghana's economy is now in a state of serious shackles and shambles. From a humble beginning of a resilient B+ rating that was bequeathed by the erstwhile Kufuor administration to a limping B downgrade rating. This indication simply means our economy needs an overhaul and a revamp to tell the story in a very successful way. The big question many of us will ask is, where are all the levies paid in the form of taxes by the poor taxpayer? Ghana deserves better and not bitter. Ejenim Boateng, is that my friend, the minister? He says, please ask the deputy minister about this for me. Former President Kufuor was in office for, 2000 and then 20, whatever. What we all know that. Days, so many days. And he borrowed GH 9.5 billion. Given that our current debt is 38.3 billion. Per Joy News report yesterday, NDC/John Mahama has borrowed Ghana cedis 28.8 billion from January to 7th January 2009. Okay, to date. This implies Mills Mahama borrowed Ghana cedis 16.5 million every year. What is government doing to stop this? Okay, on the note of that question, let me just have you respond to that question. You got it better than I follow.
Yes, it is not as simple as it's been put. I mean, many a times I see people do this kind of analysis and break it down. This is how much we're paying per day and all that. But it doesn't actually, work that way. Yes, one could argue that the rate at which you know, we have, not we as a government, but since HIPIC, you know, the debt stock is going up, it's not sustainable. But you see, you add to your debt stock when you disperse. There are some loans that were contracted, you know, maybe a few years ago. It is when we disperse that we add to the debt stock. So that money might not necessarily be borrowed this year, but if it was contracted last year and we are now disbursing, for instance, as we pay counterpart payment, you know, we use some of the bond proceeds to pay counterpart payment for loans that are in our books, but we have not disbursed. So as we pay the counterpart payment and disburse those loans, then they add to the debt stock. But the important thing is that, as I said, and I repeat that again, and Kweku, you know, rightly pointed out, you know, I have heard, you know, people, not only politicians make that argument, but even academics that I have listened to when they talk about this loan, you know, comparing loans contracted by us and other countries. And I said, we should not be making that argument. For me, that is not the important argument, whether, you know, US or some other country is far, you know, in their debt than us. Because when you net what they have borrowed and what they have lent, they probably will be in a positive position.
All right.
We don't, you know, lend to, we do some small lending, you know, through our contributions to other organizations that, you know, but, so when you look at it, our net still remains debt. Mm. The most important thing is where we are going. What do we borrow those monies for? Mm. That is why, first of all, this government, as part of the measures, is that, look, we have contracted so many loans that some of them we have not even used. Okay? There are others that we have used and the projects are uncompleted because of the patterns of borrowing, where we have long-term projects and we have borrowed short-term to meet those long-term projects. Some of the time the loans actually mature before the project itself is completed. So what we are trying to do at the moment is that, look, let's put a stop on all new contract in terms of borrowing, not all new contract, but if the contract itself has been financed already, but where we borrow to finance it. And look at the pipeline project that we have and try and complete those pipeline projects before we take on any more. By doing that, we are actually not adding to the debt stock. And then by completing the project, some of these projects are supposed to be self-financing projects that if we complete them, we'll be able to generate some money out of them to pay these debt. By doing so, we'll be reducing the debt stock. So we need to start thinking differently, which is what we are doing. But these decisions are tough because the moment you start or you stop contracting new contract, it also stagnates the economy. So it's a balancing act. But the rate at which we push the pipeline project to be executed will somehow, you know, balance it. There are other measures, as just to correct something Doc said, or not to correct it, but rather to reinforce it, is that he said that the likes of Fitch want us to tell them how we are addressing the problem. We haven't only told them, we are actually doing it. The subsidy issue, you know, we have removed subsidies on petroleum. It's one of the key things that contributed to the deficit. The PURC, you know, adjustment of tariffs, even though it was not 100%, is one of them. The reclassification.
Well, you have to be careful about that because organized labor has an ultimatum that is on your head.
I know, but unfortunately, you see, these are things that some of the problems we are facing today did not happen today or yesterday. It's been snowballing. You know, we are still relatively a poor country, and that is as a result of that we were giving these subsidies. But the subsidies were not actually going to the poor. Petroleum subsidy was subsidizing the rich. The people who are riding in their four-wheel drives, they were the ones benefiting from the subsidy. If you look at the utility, it is the same thing. Now we have this independent body. For me, government should stay away and allow the system to work properly. If labor agitation or organized labor says that we don't like this, so government should do something about it, and we go in and do it, then we erode the whole independence of the PURC. And that in the future, the benefit of getting PURC to work properly will be defeated. And that
James brings us the facts and
but we
figures
need to
wants us to do the comparison and make do the calculations. And you say all of these might not be too helpful. There are others who also say that, look, it's an argument that we have sought to abandon on this particular platform because we want to look into the future optimistically rather than getting back all the time the political, blame game. Right. But some say, now who caused some? You spent all the money in elections, threw it into elections. You forgot that things will change, and you were enjoying a stable inflation and all of that, and all of a sudden everything is thrown into shambles. I
really don't, this election thing that we talk about, I really don't subscribe to that. Yes, maybe a little more money is spent during the election year, but I wouldn't say.
I mean, there's talk about wastage. How are you cutting them? What are the steps? How are you
these are some of the things that I'm telling you. I mean, some of the subsidies that we were paying is part of the wastage that because we were spending on people who don't need it. And for me, that's a wastage. So difficult as it is, and people are quickly, to jump at, hey, people are poor, and by removing this petroleum, let's sit down and do the math and see that by removing the petroleum subsidy or removing the utilities, what percentage of poor people are very bad as a result of that, and what percentage of well-to-do people are also. Let me also take the opportunity to correct something that Kweku said. It wasn't completely wrong, but I did say that people have been saying that some of the the growth that we have chalked is a jobless growth, and I said that there is an element of truth in that.
Okay.
And the element
not a large measure.
Not a large measure, because part of the growth is coming from the oil sector.
Sure.
And the oil sector, but the oil sector also employs people, but not as many as the unemployed that we have.
Understand.
And the argument I'm trying to make is that should we then, as a result of improving the energy situation, which is an area where we can actually create jobs in terms of productivity or becoming a manufacturing-based economy, if that, we should be able to put measures in place. And if that should start, somebody will say, look at a jobless growth. What about when we start with a jobful growth? What the growth
I think you said that.
That is the point
now, Doc, in 2 minutes, when we went on break, you were discussing some possible solutions that will help to tighten situations and make sure that we are improving. Share some of them with us. What are some of the solutions you think we should be looking at?
Well, for once, we have to, and now I'm speaking to President Mahama, he has to lead the charge to tackle the bull by the horns. There is no way we can talk about this, but it is the wage bill. That is the big gorilla in the room. You can get 2.5% of the people in a country get 70% of the government revenues. It won't work. Normal range is between, even 40% is too high. And so no doubt at all, you have to bring it down.
So how do you bring it down?
Well, that's the thing. That's why I'm saying he has to get the bull by the horn.
No, speaking very plain language. So what, reduce salaries, cut back?
I will even give him a speech. Fellow Ghanaians, this is a tough decision, but it has to be done. We have to cut salaries next year by 10%. The following year, 5%, until we bring it down to manageable levels. There is no doubt about it. You can do it several ways. You can cut salaries or you can raise taxes. Either way is the same thing.
That is politically suicidal in the first place, but in an economy where taxes are rising, subsidies are taken away, you think any government can look the people who are even asking for more to tighten their belts any further?
This is why we've been downgraded. Somebody has to do it. You have no choice.
What they are receiving already is not sufficient.
I'm not talking about the ordinary person on the street. I'm talking about government workers. And I know that university, for example, the table workers, they are the lower ranks. They don't get a lot of money. But there are others whose pay have doubled.
Including yourself as
myself,
a senior
yes,
lecturer?
Indeed. Myself, too.
You are ready to sacrifice 10% of your salary
yes,
this year,
indeed.
next year?
I've said it 2 years ago when I talked to President, 2 years ago when I talked to President Mills, says, can you afford this? Look at how it got implemented. The police pay, just give them, and it was 1,000%. I wrote a letter to him. 1,000% increase for the police. I say, can you afford it? He said the police pay was too low. I say, I agree. But does it have to be 1,000%? Others will follow. The soldiers came, fire service, all the others, and then UTAG and FUSAG and TEMU and all the others lined up. Look, what is happening is this. We are taking the money from the sector of the economy that creates wealth. I'm talking about the market women, the importers. They work to pay the taxes. We take it away from them to give it to us. How are we supposed to create the wealth? That is
very interesting. What do you say about that?
Well, there is some truth in that.
I never heard about such a proposal. Cut salaries.
But as you said, that will be politically suicidal. But you see, you need very broad political consensus on this matter. Otherwise, I mean, a government taking such a position without the support of the other political parties would be shooting itself in the foot. The reason is
you can't imagine a labor revolution when such thing is contemplated.
That's the point. But I can foresee a situation where if all the political groupings, all civil society groups come together to a consensus that there is need, and it must start from the president.
Right.
It must start from the president. I mean, it may not be, across board, but to some level of public sector workers. But even more so, there are many of these public sector organizations that can, on their own, generate sufficient income to meet their needs and then even have some to put into the consolidated fund.
I joined a taxi somewhere 2 weeks ago, and the taxi driver had a very interesting proposal. He said, look, all of these problems you are talking about, if he had the opportunity to be president, he would privatize everything, including the government machinery.
Including security. Yeah. You see, but that is, so government will have to consider it. There are many organizations that can really stand on their own. There are some that have done it, and they are doing it on their own. So, that will be less politically suicidal than cutting down on salaries. But to do so, you would need broad political consensus.
Quick, 1 minute, and then we move on to Jerry's award.
Wow, this one is more than a Dawn broadcast.
It's more than a Dawn broadcast.
I swear, I cannot imagine what will happen in this country if a government dared to announce wage cut. Even wage freeze is a difficult option, which sometimes IMF, World Bank recommend, and I'm not sure we do that. We try to stagger it around the issue, no. So it sounds, to be honest, I cannot go along with it. I'm not in government, but I think I cannot support that prescription. It will lead to chaos, if you like, organized chaos out there. You know, after all, wages of the public sector employee for a very long time was also very depressed, static, virtually, not much in it. And then
one of the reasons we're told we couldn't fight corruption.
Yes, which is part of it. Corruption is both the cause and effect of underdevelopment, you know, in a strict sense of the word. But to be honest, I am not sure that even in the short or medium term, we can go for the option Doc is prescribing. It will not, the people cannot digest it. And as I said, these workers, 500,000, 600,000, they are not alone. There's a link between them and millions out there in the 25 million Ghanaians that we are talking about. How are we going to manage that situation? Okay, so the short term, I'm not sure this is a solution.
Well, can I add something?
Why not, sir?
Okay, it is not a palatable thing.
Sure.
But it is coming. We can accept it and manage it, or it will overtake us. We have no choice. The thing keeps increasing. Now we are talking about wage bill is what? 12% of GDP. 70% of revenue. It should be between 30 to 40%.
What is the cost of waste, inefficiency, and corruption? What is the percentage of that?
Well, we'll talk about it. Since you don't know, I assume we don't know. But the one we know is what I'm talking about.
Yeah, but if people see a very open, direct, strenuous effort to fight the waste, weed the waste out, fight inefficiency, bring it down, deal with corruption, that factor could help to create confidence, greater confidence in the system. Then if you come to the masses or the people and say, look here, let's do something sacrificial, they may meet you halfway. In the absence of very direct evidence of the fact that we are fighting to get rid of waste, corruption, and inefficiency, unless it's the dumb broadcast type of prescription, this is not going to work under this democratic
who are getting
polity.
this big money, they are not the masses. They are the government work, they are not the masses at all.
Last week we had a debate here. I mean, the minister is sitting here. He's told us 70%, we are told 70% of the tax revenue. Are you suggesting, and would you confirm that this goes to the top level?
It's 30% of that money.
There was the Fifi Kwete was here last week and insisting even your 30% is disputable.
So 30%
by
of
his,
what? Sorry.
Of the 70% goes to the Article 71.
No, that's
office
not,
order.
he disputed it.
That's not correct.
He disputed it.
Correct. It's less than 20%.
It's less than 20%.
Yeah. And then you see, when we talk about Article 71, you know, usually we jump to politicians.
No.
But Article
We
71,
know. We know. And the people who are listening and watching this show
all
know.
constitutional bodies.
I know.
Auditor General, all of them.
They're all in there.
Right.
But I'm not talking, look at the situation. 24 million people in the country. 2.1% of these people get 70%. And
this
how is it supposed to work?
2.1%, the 24 million, the kids, the children, all they belong to some of them.
But it comes to you.
They belong to. So you see, we have to be careful how we do the mathematics.
It's taken from the kinky seller and the kayayu and given to us.
You'll be surprised. Some of these kinky sellers come back to us.
Really.
Those people like take money.
I get that.
The fact of the matter is that we have to do something about the single spine. That is the fact of the matter.
Okay.
It's not sustainable.
It's not.
It's not.
But you see, unfortunately, during the campaign, single spine was a huge flag there.
Right.
That's part of the problem. Self-inflicted.
On this issue, let me start with you, Abdul Malik. You've got the dossier starting, is it 2001? When was it? The president, Jerry Rawlings, was supposed to have been awarded by UDS.
That was 2005.
2005, right. And then we had some news about a letter making the rounds that for security reasons, the program could not be held. A letter purportedly coming from chairman of the UDS committee board associated with the government then. And then here we are. The president has finally received what I say is a deserving award for him. Was it a sabotage, really, as far as you know?
Well, the evidence doesn't show that. This letter you refer to was written by D.C. Jima. He was the chairman of the University Council. We published a copy here. Now, first of all, this is a letter coming from the University Council chairman, but it's written on the letterhead of National Investment Bank Limited. That was an anomaly. The first paragraph is of relevance. It says, please, and this was written to the Professor John Kaburesi. He was the vice chancellor.
Right.
And it says, please, you are requested to cancel the upcoming special convocation scheduled for Saturday, March 19, 2005. This is because of national security considerations which I have been made aware of. This is the kind of letter. The National Security Coordinator, Francis Poku, then publicly distanced his outfit from this letter and indicated that there was no such security consideration. Indeed, he called the professor and assured him that there was no such security concerns and that the university could proceed and hold the event as scheduled. The regional minister, Boniface Sadiq, also publicly denied this security consideration matter, called the professor as regional minister and head of the RESEC of the Northern region, and told the professor that they should proceed with the thing, and that government was prepared to be represented based on protocol-based reasons. Dan Botchui, who was then Minister of Information, also publicly on Radio Gold denied government's involvement, and the following day issued an official statement to the effect that government had nothing to do with the thing. It was a university project and that the university could go ahead and deal with their matter. Indeed,
I am aware that Francis Woku called Jima and told him that it should not involve government and that they should proceed to do what they had to do. Why the university eventually didn't do it, I think is for Jima to answer. We wrote an editorial, that's my paper here, took Jima on, asked him to clear the air in view of the fact that in fact, Victor Smith, then subsequently on your station, this very good station, accused the former vice president, Aliu Mahama, as the source of that thing.
I remember that.
Aliu also publicly came out, denied it, and challenged Jima to come forward and authenticate what Victor Smith was saying or proceed with the event. So as far as I'm concerned, the evidence was clear that government did not have anything to do with the cancellation of the event, not necessarily the award, and indicated publicly that the university as university, with its structured, the independent autonomy and all that, should proceed. After all, this was an academic thing, and government had no business interfering in that respect. So as far as I'm concerned, the point about it was politically motivated, I think, was out of the window. Rawlings, and we did an editorial to the effect that he deserved it. So I'm being consistent on this matter. It's part of my own.
You said he deserved it on what basis?
Oh, the point is this. What was the basis the university giving it? That he pioneered the initiation of the university.
Right.
With a $50,000 award that he had won as part of the Hunger project.
Right.
He could have directed it to any other project of public interest, because people think that he could have kept that money for himself. No. But he could have then dealt with it in any other manner. He just chose to develop a university, grow a university. He deserved it. With all my criticisms and everything, even in 2005, and we have it here, we wrote an editorial that he deserved it. We embarked on a crusade against Jima for what he did. And I think that crusade still stands. And I'm happy that this whole matter has come back in this way. Jima is alive. He ought to make a retraction of this very fatally flawed decision and apologize to the good people of this country, if not to Rawlings.
You're saying that he wrote on his own accord?
Obviously.
Without anybody telling him from the castle what to do?
Because the vice president, the national security coordinator, the minister of information, the regional minister, all went public. It's not as if they didn't go public. They went public. And Jima was silent. Is it cowardly silence, as Rawlings put it? He has the opportunity. History has offered him an opportunity in a very paradoxical way for him to come forward, clear his name. For all you know, somebody told him. But even if somebody did, when all those things came public, the denials, I think he should have exhibited a certain courage of conviction and come forward to give the further and better particulars as to why he, as chairman of the University Council, took the decision he took.
Okay, so that's a challenge to you, Mr. Jima.
Yes, he's still
I know
alive.
He listens to this show.
Yeah.
If you're listening now, then just call in. We have just some 7 minutes to get out of this studio, and we'll give you the opportunity to tell us what's went
Unfortunately,
into
the
that
other
letter.
players are also all alive.
Right.
All those who issue denials,
Right.
public denials, are
Right.
all alive.
As for them, they already denied.
No, except the
We need to
professor.
hear-
And you know what?
He's
When
not
I
alive.
spoke to
Yeah.
the professor was not aware of the letter. At the point in time, we called him and said, no, as far as he was concerned, the event was coming on. I have this on record.
Right.
So the subsequent call I made to him in the evening, I read the letter out to him. Then he said, gentlemen, I still don't have a copy. I will not react till I've received a copy formally.
What do you say about this? There is Seidu Samed. He said something. I think honoring President Rawlings' doctorate award is not enough. UDS should be named after him.
I don't have anything against that. It's up to the university to take that decision. This has nothing to do with government or parties. The university as an institution could take that decision.
Mr. Ricketts Hagan, what do you say about that? That we should go beyond simply honoring him with the doctorate. He should be the university should be named after him.
I am happy that eventually this recognition has actually been given to him. I think he deserves it. We do too much pettiness, too much politics with everything. People should be recognized for their contribution to this nation. Look, no leader comes to power with the intention of coming to destroy his country. And for me, I am happy, say better late than never. we tend to give some of these things to people when they are dead.
Posthumously.
I am happy that he had lived to actually, as to whether the university should be named after him, as Kweku rightly said, is a decision for the university.
Doc?
Well, I think he deserves it. Rightly deserve it, actually. There are some people who just have money, pay money for something, they get a doctorate degree. And he actually started the university. So he deserves it, no doubt at all. Whether it should be named after him, I think they should be a bit careful. Just because somebody gives you money does not mean the whole institution must be named after him. Consider it. If he deserves it...
The money that started the project.
Yes. Yes, the money is important. This is why...
The money without which the project would never have been
I'm sure something else could have happened. But yes, he deserves it. If you're going to name it after... See, we have to cultivate this habit of not appearing to be subservient and sycophants. We can honor Rawlings after he's passed on. That's what I say. Not now. If you think, consider it.
No, but if it has to be done, then why can't you do it now?
No, because it means that, in effect, anytime somebody does something, we have to name the thing after him. No, don't set that precedent. If you consider that he deserves it, fine. You've honored him this way, wait, when he passes on. This is very, very important. It's so that it does not appear to have any level of conflict of interest in it. I do it, you name it after me. And this will happen. So if he deserves it, when he passes on, we will name it after him.
Very interesting.
You have a response to that one?
Yes. I would wish that if we're going to name things after people or we're going to give them an award, they actually live to see it.
Right.
Again, naming a university after him, I still think, you see, when you go to other parts of the world where people have made significant, and it happens all the time, significant contribution to universities, you get a portion of the university, either a lecture hall or things at the university named after people. Now, so in that you have to be starting, putting the seed money, if we can say, to start a university, and where they have brought the university. I think it's something that the university should not just jump at naming him, but eventually, if the university thinks that they should name the university after him, I wouldn't have any problem with it, but I wouldn't want to see him dead before they name a university
all right,
after
thank
him,
you, Godwin.
if they're ever going to do it.
Yeah, Godwin, what do you say?
Well, certainly it was an injustice, not just to Mr. Rawlings, but to all
the President
those,
Mahama acknowledges that.
Yeah, to all those who felt that, through his efforts, the university was brought into being. But, history has a way of dealing with these things, and today we have him being given what is due him. So I think that is important, not only because it has corrected what ought to have been done, but it also sends a message that people who contribute significantly to society can never be deprived of their pride in a place of history. But as to naming the university after him, well, I think what's important is what comes from the heart. And if from the heart of the university they think that this is one way of showing appreciation to him, I'm sure Rawlings will be very happy with that.
Yeah. But you think it's right?
Well, it happens. People do things to immortalize the memory and contributions of other people. So it wouldn't have been the first, and it wouldn't be that extraordinary. But it all depends on what that entity feels.
Supposing the university decided to name a hall of residence or something after him, would you think that would be commensurate to his contribution?
Oh, it's not about the size, but it's symbolic. If you go to Legon, we have a whole place named after Dr. Buzia and then other things. So it's just to show that you have not ignored or you have not forgotten what the person has done for you. Others can choose to be very grandiose about what they do. Others can choose to be humble, but it is the essence that's of importance.
Something to this.
Yes, go ahead, add.
You see, the reason why
but see, someone is saying if the suggestion is to name the UDS after President Rawlings, then same should apply to Professor Frimpong Boateng on the Cardio Center.
Well, all sorts of things. This is exactly what I'm talking about. It has to be a holistic view of the person, not just because he started it. After all, he was president of Ghana, so we can name anything after him. But look at the totality of the person, what he stood for. Look, in America, they've named schools and universities after Jefferson, Thomas Jefferson. Now history has proven that he was a rascal. No joke. And schools are now taking his name off of it. And this, you shouldn't do that, because those of us now, living now, we have a stake in it, right? We are too emotionally involved in it. So we are looking at it not from the objective perspective. If he's no longer here, well, now let's look at it.
And it's interesting you are saying this, because you are in academia. You are in academia. And I need to remind you once again that this show is also brought to you by the kindest sponsorship of Erata Motors, the best vehicles at the best prices. Erata Motors, the best vehicles at the best prices. If you're looking for slightly used or new ones in the best of shapes and also good prices, go to Erata Motors. They'll give you the best. MTN everywhere you go. Star Assurance, CIMG Insurance Company of the Year 2012. Valex Lease, Affordable Document Management Solutions. Bank of Africa, as strong as a group and as close as a partner. And thank you very much indeed for keeping your dials here on Joy 99.7 FM, also on this channel, Multi-TV, Joy News channel. The show was produced by Sedem Ofori with assistance from Sami and Emmanuel. And Yaya behind, as always, making sure the production comes to you TV in very clear color and good sound. This show will be repeated at 9:30 tonight on this same channel. So if you missed it, just get ready. 9:30 tonight on this show. You can on this channel you can watch it. My guest have been Abdul Malik Kwekubaku Jr., Editor-in-Chief of the New Crusading Guide newspaper. The Honorable Kweku Ricketts Hagan, he's a Deputy Minister of Finance. Dr. Richard Amwakomba, he's a Senior Lecturer and Head of Political Science Department of the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, coming all the way from...
frank.
Yes, brutally frank. Coming all the way from Kumasi to join us. Thank you very much indeed, Doc, for joining us today. And Godwin Adawene is a lawyer and lectures law at the University of Professional Studies. My name is Samson Ladi Ayenini. Have a good afternoon. The news is up next.